Hi everybody, and welcome to the Golders podcast, where we aim to sprinkle particles of knowledge by engaging and educating. With your co-hosts, father and son duo, Keith and David Mayer. We're excited to have you on this journey with us, and we know our wide variety of world-class guests will provide lots of value for our listeners. To ensure you stay up to date with everything we've got going on the podcast, make sure you subscribe. Today, we're really excited to welcome on Justin Holbrook onto the Golders podcast. For those that have read our book, you'll know that Justin features heavily in it, and we want to get some of those stories that Justin shared with us out onto this podcast. Justin is now the head coach of the Gold Coast Titans in the NRL, but we got to know Justin when he was the head coach at St Helens Rugby League Club. Justin arrived at St Helens when the team was struggling and sat at mid-table. In the 2.5 years he spent at the club, he had a win percentage of over 80%. Justin did that with honour and an humbleness that has made him revered in the town of St Helens. In a recent fans forum, Justin was voted as the greatest coach in the history of a club that spans 147 years, which is pretty good going. Enjoy.
Justin, welcome. And listen, mate, thanks for your time. I know technology is wonderful nowadays, isn't it? You know, I'm in the UK, David's over in Utah, Salt Lake, and you're over in Australia. You know, technology, it's fantastic for us to be able to connect with you again, because you featured very heavily in the book. And what we want to do today is draw out more of what our experience has been with you. So before we actually, dive into the conversation, just share with us a quick summary of your background in coaching.
Yeah, sure, Keith. Obviously, thanks for having me. Obviously, it was great to contribute to the book, and I hope it does really well, because you two, amongst you, between yourselves, is enough to write our own book without including other coaches. So, very knowledgeable men. So it's great to be on here. Look. For myself, coaching, obviously growing up in Australia, rugby league's, very big sport over here. And, I've been coaching now, I'll be going into my 15th year. So I started in the lower grades. I started as a captain coach at a semi-professional level, and then coached a lot of lower grades, some under-20s at different NRL clubs and reserve grade. And then I was assistant coach at the Sydney Roosters, who sort of won the last two competitions over here in Australia. So a very strong club. I spent 2.5 great years there, and then got the job over in St Helens in the UK there, the north of England, spent 2.5 years there, and now obviously returned to Australia to coach the Gold Coast Titans in our competition, the NRL, which is, I guess, seen as the premier competition in the world for rugby league.
You've touched on your time at the Roosters and then accepting your first big job as a head coach at St Helens. You landed in the UK on short notice after accepting the job as the head coach of St Helens. Mid-season, there's been a coaching change and you then come in. How did you build relationships mid-season with this group?
Yeah, well, obviously, it's it all happened so fast, as you said. I think in terms of coaching, whether it's football or rugby league or whatever sport, I think you've got to be open to I guess, change and opportunities. And for myself, it wasn't ideal. I was mid-season of our competition here, and we were on top of the table at the time, and everything was going great. But you're not to know where your next opportunity is going to come, and it all happened so quickly. The St Helens had parted ways with their coach, and the CEO had flown out to Australia to interview a number of coaches, and I happened to be one of them. And first of all, I'd asked the head coach permission whether I could take the job, because it'd been mid-season, and I was very lucky that he was open to it, he coached in the Super League in England himself. It was quite a whirlwind. I hadn't given a lot of thought prior to that, but it was an outstanding opportunity to be able to be a head coach. I'd always been a head coach in the lower grades, and that's what I'd always loved, being in charge. But as a really important stepping stone in my career, I had to be an assistant coach at the top level, which was our NRL competition here in Australia. So to have 2.5 years as an assistant NRL coach, learn a lot of the details of the game in coaching. As an assistant, you don't worry about macro decisions, the big picture ones. You're on the details of coaching, and that was a really important learning curve for myself. But then, to have the opportunity to open up, and within 10 days of meeting the CEO, I was on a plane over to the UK. And what I did in that short space of time was watch as many games as I could. Obviously, the fact that they're changing coaches meant that they weren't doing well. They're a proud club, St Helens, and they'd just been, the last game before I come over, they'd been bundled out of the Challenge Cup 46-4. So it was a heavy loss for them that is unexpected of their standards. So I had to quickly learn about all my players as quick as I could, as well as touching base with some of the coaches and performance staff before I even landed. And then the minute I landed, I only had, I think I landed on a Thursday. I met the coaches that afternoon, and the next day we had training with the players before we went up to what we have as a Magic Weekend, where every team plays at the one venue. We played up at Newcastle, St James's Park. So I had one training session, and in that short amount of time, I wanted to, I guess, prove to the players how excited I was about the opportunity to coach them. They were in a bad spot. They weren't sitting well. I think they were 8th in the league. And about building relationships, one thing I wanted to let them know was I was leaving a great opportunity to join them. I wasn't a coach out of work and waiting for an opportunity. I was at the leading assistant coach at the leading club in the Premier competition here in Australia. So, I wanted to prove to the players that, I was going there for the right reasons, that I wanted to get that club going well again. And I wanted to let the players know that I knew as much about them as I could in a short amount of time.
So 2 days after you arrive, you go up to Newcastle, win the game convincingly. From then on out, there were a lot of highs in your time as the coach at St Helens. 2.5 years, you had a lot of success, both on and off the pitch. What did you do to maintain and continue to build those relationships with not only the players, but also the staff that you were working with in that period?
Yeah, well, when you're sort of, especially in coaching, I think a lot of it's got to come naturally to you. Whenever you hear coaches say, "Oh, I'm a good man manager," or "good relationships," I think, you've got to have a lot of natural instinct in those areas. And I talk a lot to Keith, a lot of other coaches. You talk about the X's and the O's and the technical side of the game. At the elite levels, everyone's on par in that area. And I guess it's the relationships that you've got to, and as leaders, you've got to be influencers. That's what you are as a leader. You influence the players, and you've got to have them wanting to change. And I guess for me, the situation I was in, I had to, we talk about culture a lot. I had to change the culture and change the environment. And as head coach, I was only one person. Everybody else was staying the same in terms of players and staff. So I had to lead it and get everyone to buy in. Lucky enough, I already had great staff there. Still had good players. They were just in a bad environment that we had to change. And in terms of the 2.5 year period, it was ongoing. I had lots of highs, but I had lots of disappointments too. It took me the 2.5 years to win the Super League title. 2017, the year I got there, halfway through the year. As I said, the game before I got there, we got beat 46-4 against the side Castleford, who finished on top. We finished 4th, played them in a semi-final at their home ground that year, and got beat in extra time by a 1-point field goal. So that season, as much as it was high as how far we'd come, it finished with heartache. So 2018, we started on fire and won nearly every game. And unfortunately, in rugby league, different to football, you've got to win a grand final. It's not, first past the post. We finished clear a second spot, but lost the semi-final, so bundled out. So it took the full 2.5 years to get the results. And the last year was fantastic. We only lost 3 games all year. I think we finished 16 points clear a second, which is a record in the UK for the game's been on 124 years. We finished a record gap to second place and won the comp. So to I guess leave the club knowing that we've had the best season in the history of the game over there is rewarding. A lot of good times, but in terms of how I went about it, it was just, Keith talks a lot about caring about your players and getting to know them. And, we talk about finding makes them tick. And, a lot of sport, there's no room for variation. You've got to set your standards and principles, and you've got to have everyone live by them. But to get that extra little bit at the end, you've got to get to know your players and show an interest in them. And for me, I'm lucky that comes natural. I think that helps my day, knowing what guys are interested in and showing an interest in them is not something I have to work at. It's something I enjoy, and that helps a lot, and it helps with your consistency. That's what you want as a coach. You want to have your sides playing consistent, and when you get that, you're in a good place. And very hard to leave after things like that. It's in a very good place. You've got everything in place in terms of staff and players, but that's our job as coaches to get ourselves in that spot.
You land in England, you meet with all the players. How did you get to know the players? Had you done some groundwork prior to arriving?
Well, the most groundwork I could do was watch games, and unfortunately, it wasn't good because they weren't winning, and I could see the frustration in the players. And then when I spoke to the staff, I could see that, or hear that how frustrated the staff were. And sometimes you're trying too hard, but other times the environment needs a change. And my head of performance, Matty Daniels, said a great quote that I use. He said, "Unfortunately for us, the wrong thing has become the right thing to do in terms of how they were living their daily routines and." Whether it's turning up late or getting on the bus with the wrong shirt or lots of little things that are getting slipped through that we had to change. But we had to, for myself, it was show the change for a reason because we want to be successful. It was a proud town, St Helens, and they were off the players quickly, and the players were, trying to have a go at the fans. And I said, well, you're going the wrong way about it. You start playing well, and they'll get behind you. So it was lots of small changes I think I made. One change I remember, I got rid of the ping pong table, they had in the players' room, and that's while it's only a small move, it's a big move to make when you're a new guy and you're the one new person. The players love playing it in between, whether it's a field session and gym or first thing in the morning. But I said to them, unless you plan on going to the Olympics for ping pong or table tennis, there's no point you playing it. We're going to get better at rugby league here. And upset a couple of the boys that thought they were pretty good at it. But once you start to win games, and I guess the benefit for me was arriving mid-season, I didn't have a full pre-season to change things. We had to change it instantly. And as you said, Dave, we're lucky enough we had a really good win first game. I only had a short impact with them. And then our next game was our biggest rivals in the competition, Wigan. And we scored in the last minute and a half to beat them that night at home. So all of a sudden, the belief in the players is there a lot quicker than I could have asked for because we had the rewards, we had the wins on the board that they thought, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. So I guess that helped me in terms of, I think we won our first 4 games. So the ones that I guess would have had a slight resistance to the change bought into it pretty quickly.
In our book, in chapter 6, talked about coaching energy. Can you expand on that and what coaching energy means to you?
Yeah, it's something, Keith, I'm massive on. I've talked to you about the technical side. I think everyone's very good technically in coaching in elite sport, no matter what sport it is. But for me, the difference around it is motivation or effort and energy, all the effort areas in a game. And for me as a coach, I believe in what I mean by coaching energy is players come in the day and, they're in all different moods. Some of them have had a bad night's sleep and would have had young babies, and everyone's in different moods. And for me, we're the first people that they're going to see, and we set the tone for the day. And the minute, we're in a team meeting before the field, I'm upbeat and I'm excited about what we're going to do that day, and I run through it. And coaching energy is the players are looking at us first. And if I walk out onto the field and my head down and look a bit miserable, then I can guarantee without the players giving it much thought, that they follow suit. So I'm big about getting out there, go, how good's this? We're out here doing something we love. And, and I'm a big fan of Pete Carroll, who coaches in the NFL, the Seahawks. And he competes. Everything's about competition for him. And I was lucky enough to spend a couple of days over there. And you sit in long video sessions, and the minute you go on the field, he's throwing the gridiron ball around, and he's the one, and he's in his 60s, and he's upbeat. And that's when I was watching us, and that's coaching energy for me. That's showing the players that you're that excited to be out there, and they buy into it too. So I just think it's a huge part of our jobs, and I see one a real importance into. Well, I guess it's setting the standards for the day each day, and it's a roller coaster ride coaching. You have wins and losses and good training sessions, bad training sessions. It's got everything in it within a week, but for me, you got to embrace all that. You got to have the energy. You got to have plenty of energy, and the players feed off it.
What I'm picking from there is if the coaches are flat, then of course the energy will project. So the energy's got to come from inside of us to then project into the players. That's basically what you're saying here, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when it comes to players, you do a lot of reading, or you witness the best, in their chosen sport, and they talk about, creating their own energy, and they don't need any extra external, it comes from within, and that's what we want if we're coaching players. If we're lucky enough to have, in our game, we have 13 on the field and 4 subs. If we can get 17 players like that, then you don't have to do a lot of coaching. But you've always got a couple of them, and you're always going to have a couple of guys that aren't that way, and it's up to us to get everybody in that state where they just are really looking forward to training. We train every day. You'll always have a day off for recovery and things like that. But for me, it's creating the environment. Players are driving into work knowing, we're lucky to do what we do, and we want to do it well, and we want to impress. And it's all about creating the right environment. And for me, the best players have that. They create their own energy and their own effort levels, and they don't need any help. And for me, if we can do that as coaches, then that's the way to be successful.
Justin, we were lucky enough to spend time in your presence and in the environment you created. We went to practices. We were in team meetings. We saw the crack that the boys had with each other, the enjoyment that was around the group, the energy that was in the group in and out of practice. And for us, it was an incredible experience to be around. But what was evident to us, and bear in mind, we're talking about world-class athletes here. You created a learning environment. When you were doing that, did you have set guidelines going in on how you wanted to create it, or was that something that grew organically as you developed as a group?
Yeah, it's a great question. It definitely grew over time. I'm at 2.5 years there. I think to start with, because the situation the club we're in, it had to be more coach-driven, more a dictatorship, I guess, on how we wanted to play and how we wanted to train, intensity-wise, and the way we wanted to go about our daily routine. But over time, it became player-driven, and I think that was really important for me as a coach. Once you set your principles and your standards on everyday performance, and then to be able to have the luxury of handing it over to the players in terms of learning. I mean, I learned just as much off them. As you said, as a coach, you coach younger kids and you do a lot more coaching. When you get higher levels, you get to deal with elite players, and they generally know as much as you do as a coach, and you got to include them in it. And once you agree in terms of how you want to play with certain players in your team, then they've bought into it. And then in terms of learning, then that's why I get their ideas and input in terms of preview on how we want to do certain things, because they're the ones that have got to go out on the field and do it. And I guess so that definitely evolved over time. And to have, like yourself, David, and Keith come in, for me, it wasn't just for you guys to learn, it was for me to learn. I got some great, ideas, and I had a lot of, well, not a lot, but we had a fair few guests come in from other sports too, from football and rugby union, that because we were obviously doing such a good job at St Helens, people want to come in all areas, whether it be the medical side, different physios, or different, head of performance guys or coaches. So, and always welcome them, because at the Sydney Roos in Australia, we always have a lot of guests come to training, other coaches and things, and you learn so much. We learn off each other. And I guess one thing was that, where we got to as a team and as an organisation was, we did have lots of banter and fun, and even during video sessions. And I got no doubt when certain coaches would come in, they'd be thinking, how are these guys sort of winning every week? And then when we walk over to training, we'd still be laughing, and we'd be having a joke in warm-up and prior to training. But then over time, the players knew when they had to switch on. And, when we got into certain parts of training, there wasn't a lot of coaching needed. The players knew what they had to do, and they set their own high expectations. And it all formed over time into just absolute pleasure to be at every day. And that's why I enjoyed having people come to our practice and our organisation, because they could see how much all the staff got on well, the players and staff interacted really well, and we were getting results, and that was the main thing. In any sport, everyone loves having good relationships, but you've got to be successful. Otherwise, you're not going to be around as a player or a coach. So you've got to make sure your environment's got the right mix in terms of, we're having a good time, but we're also working very hard and getting enough done to make sure we're going to be successful on the weekend and long term and being consistent. So, it's probably a combination of all that, mate. But over time, learning is for everybody, and I learn just as much now as ever. So it's an ongoing thing, which is the best part about it.
We had a lot of opportunity to spend, me particularly, in Hotel Starbucks. We would get our catch-ups, which was excellent. But, your openness and receptive mentality to want to learn from others, we saw it at first hand. And who have been the people who have influenced you on how you approach the game and how you coach?
Oh, I think that there's so many, Keith. I think, you'll hear a lot of coaches say, from their playing days, they pick up things off their coaches and even teammates. I was lucky enough, I wasn't a great player, but I played with some great players and just see how they go about their business. And I guess later in life now that I'm at a high level of coaching, it's just continual, mate. It's just speak as many people as you can, and the relationship I was lucky to form with yourself. I mean, it came out of the blue just through your curiosity, which is a credit to yourself. And you're a great person to learn from as well as learn. You love learning, and I think the interesting thing for me was we met, and I used to love meeting you on days off. We'd have one day off in the middle of the week, and we'd go down for a 45-minute catch up, and 3 hours later we'd leave Starbucks. And I learned more. We always left, and you'd thank me for what I shared with you, but I'd always go away just recharged and couldn't wait to get back into training the next day. So I think that's why, as a coach, it's so important, because your weeks are so jam-packed in. You play a game, you review it, you're preparing, previewing the opposition, and the weeks are, you feel like you can hardly come up for a breath. But if you then get a day off or a half a day off, and obviously it's good to switch off. But if you can chat to someone outside of your current environment, you can just come in with fresh ideas. And even a brief one. Last year, we won our major semi-final and had a week off before our grand final. And I actually flew over to Leinster in Ireland and spent a day with them in rugby union and spoke to Stuart Lancaster and their staff there. And funnily enough, they wanted me to go through our semi-final and get ideas off why we played a certain way. And through that discussion, we got to, in our game, rugby league, a scrum, and we get 6 tackles. Rugby union get a phase, so they were more likely to have a shot on one play, whereas we would build our set. But the guys, the 3 coaches, questioned me, why aren't you having a go at a short side here when it's open? And I said, because we sort of build the 6 tackles in. And then I went away from it thinking about it. And sure enough, in the grand final, doing the preview, I said, this is a great opportunity if we get a scrum to actually have a shot that rugby union would do. And we scored our first try of the game off that night on our biggest stage. So you never know where you're going to get your next learning experience from. But, if it's an hour and a half with someone and you go away with one thing, then to be able to implement it is brilliant. So I think never stop learning off anyone, but read and listen as much as you can. But once you find that couple of people like I've done with yourself, Keith, I think the more you keep talking to them, the better you be as a coach.
So listen, you've worked with some world-class players and master locksmiths in your particular game and time as a coach. How do you work with those type of players? What's the differences between, those people that can just open doors and the ones who are they're like the chariots. They'll get there, but what's the difference? How do you work with them?
Well, they're the special ones in your side, aren't they? That as a coach, you need them. Like you said, there's lots of chariots or lots of soldiers that that every side needs and they've got, but you need those couple of special key guys, the locksmiths, the Mavericks, the special ones. They make the difference, when the game's even. They're the ones that come up with the special plays, and they're a pleasure to work with. But the key, I find anyway in my coach, is include them. They're the ones on the field that when you're a coach and you're feeling helpless sitting in the stands watching the game, they're the ones that are in control, and they're the ones that are generally the difference. They're the ones that win the big games for you. They're the most confident players because they are that good. They're always the hardest working. They study the game. And as a coach, I think don't try and ever think that you know more than them and I've got a great player on my side here, but I'm going to tell him what to do. I think that's the completely wrong approach. I think that you embrace them, you include them by having lots of conversations on how we want to play, because if they run on the field and they've already had an involvement and an investment on how you're going to go about things, they've got an emotional attachment to and a responsibility on, well, I want to do these certain things. So they better work. Otherwise, the coach is going to say, well, hey, this is your idea, mate, some of the time. So in my experience, as you said, I've been lucky enough to have some of the world's best in our sport of rugby league in my time already, just learning coaching. But, yeah, my biggest, I guess, point would be to include them into how you want to do things, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to do it for you, and they're the ones that win you the games.
Hmm. The question that was posed around the world-class players and the master locksmiths, in your time at St Helens, Justin, you didn't really recruit many players. I think maybe 3 or 4 players you recruited, and you took over a team that were sat mid-table, and you turned them into, arguably, I'm a St Helens fan, so I'm going to say they were the best team in the Super League era, but you've took over them, you've turned it around, and I think that's a credit to you and your ability to develop players and to let them grow. And since you started in 2017, the middle of 2017, I would argue that you've turned a lot of those players, they've gone from being very good players to being world class. And I know it's a joint effort, but I would put a lot of that on your work as a coach in developing people. But moving on to the present, Justin, new job, new role, new challenge. So you're now at the Gold Coast Titans. You've left the rain and the clouds. You're in the Gold Coast with sunshine, and you're now going to be faced with some similar challenges, but also different challenges than you were faced with at St Helens. How do you adapt, and how do you adjust to get the most out of yourself, your coaching staff, and the players that you're going to be working with?
Yeah, well, that's a long answer, David. I think, it's a great point, because you do have to adapt. I mean, for myself, and I've seen other coaches do it, where they've been at assistants at certain clubs and then gone to a different club and said, this is what success is and we have to do this and play this way and train this way. But it doesn't work, because you're in a completely different environment. I've gone from a strong club that were in a bad spot to now I've come to the premier competition. Unfortunately, the sides at the bottom of the table have finished last couple of years. So it's, as you said, a lot of challenges, and I've got to adapt in, I've coached at probably 7 or 8 different clubs, which has helped me because it's gained a lot of experience. I think if you go from a coach and you've been an assistant at a club and then you go to another club and you've only ever been at one, then you're like, whoa, what's happened here? I'm lucky enough to have coached at a lot of different places. So that's put me in good stead. But in terms of adapting and adopting, you got to, as a coach in whatever sport you got to coach certain principles you don't change. You can't change the way you think about the sport or the non-negotiables of the hard work, the things that haven't changed in rugby league for 124 years about working hard and, working for each other and team-based principles. But in terms of how you're going to play, that's the biggest way you've got to adapt, because you've got different players, different strengths and weaknesses. And as I say, that's in any sport. You can have your certain way you want to play, but if your players aren't capable or suited to that style. So I guess my biggest challenge now is, as you said, the environment I'm in now is possibly the best place in Australia to live, the Gold Coast. We've got beautiful beaches here. We've got the best climate in, I think, world sport. it's coming into winter here and it's mid 20s degrees Celsius. So it's a beautiful place to be, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here for rugby league, and we haven't. I'm at a club now that we've got everything in place. The owners, everyone in the front office wants success here, but we've got to transfer it onto the field. And the critical part of the Gold Coast is it's a nice place to live, but there's no success in the teams, and in particular, in rugby league. So I've got huge challenge, but it's exciting. I'm so excited about the opportunity of being able to make the difference, adapting in how we want to play, but the still principles that I've always coached by instilling in the players, and it'll be ongoing and will improve a lot, but it'll take a bit of time. But I'm really excited about the opportunity on as a coach being able to make the biggest difference up here.
We're excited for you. We're excited to follow your journey. Going forward, I think you've got a long time left in your career and things will change. We've spoke about it previously, how you have to evolve and adapt. For you, what qualities will the coach of the future need to possess?
A real consistency. I talk a lot about that. It's something that I've always been able to still in my teams. And it's we talk about how you become consistent as a coach with the way your teams play, and it's just through your values and your standards and your daily. It's got to be a daily thing. We know all as coaches, it just doesn't happen game day. We know it's all week's preparation, and it's how you, as a coach, I think you're a reflection of how your team plays. You always see certain sides, if they play a real aggressive, dirty, maybe style, in football, there might be a lot of hacking will take players out. And, you can bet you that it's a reflection of that coach's personality is how I think. So as a coach, I believe you're a reflection of the way your team plays. And for me, I want some real consistency and effort. As a coach, two main things I ask for is work hard and enjoy it. You've got to enjoy, it is a sport, it is a profession, we're getting paid to do it, but no matter what you do in life, if you don't enjoy it, if you don't get out of bed every day looking forward to what you've got to do, then you won't be good at it. You won't put in the effort, or you won't have the, I talk about emotional attachment to something, and it was easy to get in St Helens because the whole town lived it. So I said to the players, a great responsibility. Different challenge here, Gold Coast. You've got surfing and surf lifesaving and skateboarding and AFL and football, soccer and rugby league, and you've got a million different things going on. But for me, it's my job to get rugby league the most important part of our life for the group in terms of staff and players, and that's what I want to implement.
You mentioned earlier in the interview about changing culture. Now, of course, the conversation that we've had over a period of time, changing culture takes a heck of a long time. We speak here about the different lifestyle. Are they playing because they like living in the area? Are they playing because they want to play rugby? Is there anything specifically that you're doing? Any one specific thing that you're aiming to achieve in terms of shifting that mindset? And so therefore it's becoming it's a natural thing for them to turn up, and you're affecting the culture from inside the players or player individually. Is there anything that you're doing? Is there anything that you've changed from when you were at St Helens? We had a very successful experience there to where you are now.
I think that the biggest thing is what I'll keep the same is as a coach, it's what you reward the players for. So in terms of how you want to change a culture and change your environment, it's what you reward them for is what they'll repeat. So it's a real get away from individual focus or certain areas of the game that, yeah, they look pretty and everyone likes to watch it, but it's not what successful teams are built on. So for me, it's in terms of training, we've had a long pre-season, and it's about making it clear what we're going to be rewarding them for. And then over time, that becomes normal. And whenever everyone talks about culture and leadership, and they're very important, but what you want it to become is normal. So at St Helens, we set very high standards, and everyone did everything the right way, but it became normal. So no one had to try too hard. But at the moment, when you change that, you get lots of 2 steps forward, 1 step back in daily training sessions and daily routines. So I guess for me, I'll talk about consistency. Once you can get that and the players are clear what you're going to reward them for, they'll repeat that. And that's drilling into them, I guess, all the time and making it clear what our values are and making them clear, so they don't have to run to their locker and get the sheet of paper. They can just, and it's not rules. Do we have to put a shirt on when we went from the training field back to the ice bars? And, well, I don't want to have a 50-point rule, on how we're going to live our daily lives. Is it the right thing to walk up without a shirt off, knowing that there's, cameras around? Well, no, it's not. So it's about choices for me, and it's about educating them on. Everyone makes choices all day long, and I said, if you can't, I can't police you for the 8-10 hours you are here, and then worrying about the other. When you leave here, what choices are you making? Are you stopping at the takeaway shop because you're hungry, or are you going for the healthy option? So I guess it's education, and then, like, similar to what I said about the learning environment, then over time you hand it over to the players. So I guess for me it's starting again with all that process, and that's where I'm at the moment, still on that starting area, and then over time you want to hand it over to the players, and it becomes easier to live day in, day out.
I'm going to change tack slightly. If you could go back in time 10 years, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Fortunately enough, in coaching, if I look in a coaching sense, I'm really happy. If you want to say to me, go back 20 years, I think as a player, disappointed, but it's also helped me coaching. I fell just short as a player. I played 17, first grade games, top level games, and a lot of reserve grade. And that was through just that lack of, when people talk about players that do extras or, so I'll always have disappointments around that. But what it has done is put me in great stead to want to be a successful coach. So I've worked really hard in that area. So in terms of my own coaching experience, and I wouldn't change anything because I think I've gone about it the right way. As I said, I started at a semi-professional level, and then I got into lower grades, and then I worked my way up as an assistant at the top level. Then I went to the second highest competition, which is over in the UK Super League, and had success there. And now I've ended up in the Premier competition. So I guess my own advice is keep doing what I'm doing, and I think enjoy it and don't rush it. That's my biggest thing, and I haven't done that. So I'm confident in my coaching, as when you get great players come through at a young age, they're just so confident in what they're going to do and why they're confident. Obviously, they've had success back up what they've done coming through, and I've been lucky enough to have success at a lot of levels I've coached at, which has just opened the next door for me, and it's been an ongoing journey that, I guess when you think, you only think of what you'd love to change is the couple of years you fall short as a coach, whether, you fall short of the big game and things like that. But that's what drives you to be better the next year. So no big changes, mate. I'm very fortunate.
Well, Justin, I've known you over 2 years now. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, getting to know the person, but actually getting to know, and I think that's the important part of it. The magic is getting to know the person rather than the actual persona. It's a perception that when we meet people as they are, they act a certain way. But when you get, like I have with you, it's been really special. And so look, I thank you for taking part in our little project, and the book project that David and I have been on, and the journey continues, and this is part of it. So I thank you for that, and feel extremely privileged to have you in our life. It's special. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me on for this podcast, and in particular getting to know you guys. I think it's we talk about as coaches, you learn off people, but you two men are really impressive in your own fields, and it was a pleasure to be involved in the book Gold Dust. And I think that if you boys had your time over, you probably wouldn't need anyone else to be involved in it. There's enough knowledge there and enough smarts about what's needed to be great coaches. So I think you'll only go on to bigger and better things. And I'm glad now because of to have all those times with you boys at my facility or at Starbucks, I thought, geez, there's so many more people that should be knowing about what you guys have got to offer. So I think it's great. It just gets myself as a coach thinking all the time, and all other coaches, I guess the advice around coaching is don't rush your own experience. If you're coaching under 10s or 12s and you want to coach Premier League in football, don't try and do it the next year. I know that's unrealistic, but don't try and skip stages. I think when you ask me about my coaching, I think for me, I've always wanted to get where I am, but I haven't been in a hurry to do it, because if you try and get past the level you're at, you won't be successful there, and then the next door won't open. So I think every time I talk to you guys, I feel privileged that I'm at this level, but I also know that it's a continuation of learning, and what it does, it gets you excited to get back into it. So I guess, thanks for having me on the show, and I wish you boys all the best, because you've got so much knowledge there, and David's just starting his journey, and Keith, you continue yours, and I look forward to seeing where you boys get to with all this, because you're outstanding in what you do.
Justin, I think from me, from a professional standpoint, over the time that I've got to know you, I've learned a huge amount from you. I'm extremely thankful that we've been able to spend that time with you. But I think from a personal standpoint, for anybody that does know me, I'm a diehard St Helens fan. And you brought joy into my life, watching the team, supporting, and it meant that much more that I was able to spend time with you and know how you went about your business. But I think for the whole town, what you did for a whole town was absolutely incredible. And I'll always be a St Helens fan. My dad will too. There's been family rifts because of it, and I blame you for that, Justin. But one thing that we're Gold Coast Titans fans. There's no doubt about that. We'll be following you, and wherever you go on your journey, wherever it takes you, we'll be following you. And we thank you for sprinkling gold dust in our lives, and also within the book and in the podcast too. I know this will be invaluable for people. So from both of us, thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me, boys, as I said. But, I love my time there, in particular St Helens. And I guess in a coaching sense, keep moving on as a coach. I would have loved to have stayed there. I love my time there. And we built a great club again, and a successful one. But it's about your next challenge as a coach. And that's why I've ended up here. And keep learning, keep getting better at what you do, and as you boys do, and I'll do it myself. So thanks very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Gold Dust podcast today. If you enjoyed this episode and you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Your continued support is highly appreciated, and it means so much to us knowing that the content that's being produced is providing value in people's lives. If you would like to know more or get more information from us, you can follow us on Twitter at Gold Dust Podcast. And also you can visit our website at www.golddustmentoring.com. Thank you, everybody.